Hey, what is going on? We're here to check out a Warhammer video. We're here to check out Magnus the Red Crimson King. If you guys haven't subscribed, I ask that you guys do so. We post our reactions about 4 times a week here on this channel. And sometimes I add in some extra stuff that I'm working on. Let's just jump into the video. It's late in the night, and I want to record as much as possible before I go to bed.
The universe would stagnate and collapse. Only through this struggle can any advancement occur.
Ooh, I like that one. By the way, guys, if you have videos to recommend, use the pinned comment to suggest those. Just go right underneath the pinned comment and then recommend stuff, because that's where I circle back to.
The Primarchs of his Imperium are among the strongest beings in the galaxy. Gifted power beyond the comprehension of mere mortals, the sons of the Emperor would lead their armies at the vanguard of battle. Yet each Primarch would strive to push the limits of their strength, whether in martial prowess, artifice, or psychic potential. For today, we shall elucidate a Primarch unequaled in his mastery of the warp, blinded by the allure of fell knowledge. The Primarch of the 15th Legion, Magnus the Red.
Jeez, epic armor, by the way.
The young son of the Emperor would be unique among his brethren in many ways.
Red skin for starters.
To remember the origin of his creation, the psychic power of the Crimson Child would be potent from the start. Within his gestation pod, inside the gene labs of Terra, the child would utilize his innate psychic abilities to commune with the master of mankind. Spirited to the colony world of Prospero during the scattering of the Primarchs, the son of the Emperor would emerge into a world steeped in the mystical arts of sorcery. The populace had been shunned by humanity for its manipulations of the immaterial realm since the days of the Dark Age of technology, and in their isolation, they would work tirelessly to understand the nuances of the warp. Plagued by beings known as the Psychnuin, the power emanating from the psyches of the planet would draw the foul warp-spawned insectoid creatures to prey on the minds of the weak. The sorcerers would band together to stave off the incursions of the creatures, and within their bastions, study means to hone their psychic might.
This is crazy.
Like to a comet, the Primarch's gestation pod would plunge through Prospero's orbit and crash into the central plaza of the world's capital, Tizca. Among the sorcerers of the planet, a lone man would step forth to investigate the capsule. Amon, a senior member of the Tizcan commune, would find a child within and raise the young boy as both father and tutor. The boy would quickly mature and demonstrate an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. The kind mentor and powerful psyker of Prospero would teach the son of the Emperor every art in the Arcanum within his understanding. Every art in the teach the son of the Emperor every art in the Arcanum within his understanding. Within years, Amon's mastery of the ether would be surpassed by his adopted child, as Magnus read ancient tomes, compendiums, and scraps of text within the City of Light's librarium. No longer the most revered sorcerer of Prospero, Amon would with pride relinquish his mentorship of the boy and assume the mantle of student to his own son.
That's crazy.
None had ever seen a being capable of the wonders Magnus could conjure, and with time, the master of the warp would rally the people of Prospero to eradicate the Psychnuin from their world.
I don't remember if this dude fell to chaos, but the way he's using that warp, definitely gonna fall to chaos. I don't remember. Alexa, set the temperature to 72 degrees.
Entire cities of Prospero had been infested with the creatures of the warp and claimed untold souls from their harvest. With Magnus's ascension as the ruler of Prospero by dint of his power, the Crimson King would lead his unified band of sorcerers to cleanse their once noble bulwarks. Purging the beings from Prospero, Magnus would see to the reconstruction of
One second.
Of the city of Tizca, with knowledge gleaned from the reclaimed city's long-dormant repositories of knowledge and history. The City of Light would transform into a paradise. Marble and glass pyramids would jut into the heavens as the citizenry studied Arcanum within the tranquil parks and boulevards of Tizca.
Definitely Egyptian theme or something.
Enraptured with bliss and safety, the Prosperans would flourish with the peace brought by their new monarch. Yet the Crimson King would not be satisfied with the lot of his people. Seeking to further master and explore the power of the so-called Great Ocean, Magnus would see to the construction of a vast great library within the heart of Tizca, for the scholars of Prospero to further probe their understanding of the Immaterium. Despite his once mentor Ammon warning the Crimson King against delving too deep into the nadir of
Despite his once mentor Ammon warning the Crimson King against delving too deep into the nadir of the Great Ocean. Okay.
The Great Ocean, Magnus would journey further into its tides.
Oh, no.
Such acts of psychic power would emanate through the galaxy and quickly draw the attention of the Master of Mankind to its origins. During 840, point
That's how you found them.
The Emperor of Mankind would descend unto the precincts of Tizca. The two had conversed for years as the Master of Mankind sought to reunite with his prodigal son, and upon the Emperor's reunion with his child, he would embrace him. Accompanying his father for solar decades, Magnus would join the Emperor in his traversal and study of the warp. Yet the Master of Mankind would warn Magnus that even though they were among the most psychically powerful beings in the galaxy, the machinations of the warp were not to be overindulged.
The Emperor knew.
Dangers lurked within the depths of the great ocean, to which no man, no matter his strength or wisdom,
yeah, look at these things.
To its malevolent influence.
Malevolent influence.
Installed as the leader of the 15th Legion, the Thousand Sons, Magnus's kin would follow in their Primarch's image as the most gifted psychers of the Legiones Astartes.
Dang.
Yet their gifts would not be without cost, as the 15th Legion had been ravaged by a warp-borne mutation known as the Flesh Change. Mutation and organ rejection would be rampant within the Legion as a direct result of their psychic affinity, to which their numbers had dwindled to 1,000 souls.
Dang!
The Emperor had named them to honor those who had survived the decline of their numbers and remained resolute and stalwart in the face of their dire circumstance.
Jeez.
Many within the Imperium would advocate for the euthanizing of its remaining Astartes to prevent further unavoidable mutations. But Magnus would
it's
plead
still
to
better
the
than
Emperor
nothing.
to allow the Crimson King to seek a cure for their ailment.
Yeah.
Agreeing to his request,
It's still better than, like, nothing, because gene seed is such a limited thing. I know we're losing people, but it's about attrition. I would try to keep them as a powerhouse, not ethical or anything like that. Just power.
The Emperor would allow the Crimson King several decades to find the cure for his gene sons. In secret, Magnus would naively consort with the entities within the Great Ocean and be offered a balm for his men.
Of course.
Sacrificing his eye in the bargain for his legion's survival, Magnus would be manipulated by the schemer of the warp, Tzeentch.
Of course.
Believing himself to have cleansed the flesh change from his legion, Magnus had bought only a temporary reprieve for his 1,000 sons. His arrogance damning his legion to endure future hardships, the Crimson King and the 1,000 Sons would rejoin the Great Crusade 100 years after the Emperor's arrival to Tizca.
100 years.
The Imperium still treated the army of Sorcerers Astartes with suspicion, and the 1,000 Sons of Magnus would need to vindicate themselves from their detractors.
But they know if they have to.
Regardless of their small numbers in comparison to their brother legions, the 15th would quickly prove themselves to be more than capable of bringing worlds into compliance.
I see. I feel like this was a power balance thing. They're very powerful psychers, and there's little of them. So I don't want to say like one of these should be able to fight like 2 or 3 Astartes from other legions, but you know they're very strong. I imagine.
Displaying their mastery of the warp in bouts of immense arcane might, the 1,000 Sons would emulate a fragment of the Emperor's own power during their campaigns. Led by their striking Crimson Lord, the 15th Legion would be among the most noble warriors of the Imperium. Akin to scholars more than warriors, the Astartes of Prospero would delight in their mastery of the Immaterium, enthralling the populations of worlds rather than expunge them with devastation and fire. Such tactics would earn the ire of the Primarch of the 6th Legion, Russ, for their flagrantly dishonorable manipulations of the will of their foes. Gathering knowledge from every corner of the galaxy,
it either sound like a bad thing to
Crimson
me.
King would pen a tome enriched with knowledge and arcanum of the warp, the Book of Magnus.
The Book of Magnus.
Fastened to Magnus's armor in heavy golden chains, the book wrapped in the hide of a slain Psyche would be for the eyes of the Crimson King alone. Breaching the Eldar Webway with his scavenged knowledge, Magnus would ever further infringe upon the boundaries outlined by the Emperor.
Of course he will. Of course he would.
The Thousand Sons' obsession with claiming knowledge from conquered worlds would sow distrust among the Primarchs and their legions, for the 15th could not be trusted in indulging in knowledge in breach of the Imperial truth.
Of course.
Raising their concerns to the Master of Mankind, the Space Wolves, Death Guard, Imperial Fists, and Raven Guard would demand reprisal for the Thousand Sons' abuse of sorcery. Convening the Council of Nikaea, the Emperor would decide the fate of the Librarius within the legions and be swayed by the council of both Primarchs and Astartes invested in its cause. Magnus would champion the use of psychers within the legions, and despite a rousing speech before the assembled
I remember
conclave,
this one.
his
The Emperor struck him down. You know what's crazy when you watch different videos? I figure we're about to get into, is it Mortician? You know I'm bad with names. Or Mortion? It's not Mortician. It's not Mortician. It's Mortarion. Mortarion. I got it. Because I already been through this in my mind. I said Mortician. I was like, not Morticia. That's from the Addams family. Mortarion. Mortarion don't these psychers. So in the last video, I was happy for Mortarion because the Emperor sided with him. But in this video, I'm disappointed because the Emperor did side with Magnus already. See how when you're depending on whose side you are, how things are affected? Not that I was ever on Mortarion's side. It's just that I was listening to his side of the story and I was invested. So I was like, yay, good for him. Now I'm listening to Magnus. I'm invested in his side. And I'm like, oh, no, bad for you. Anyways.
Of the Death Guard.
Oh, look at it. Mortarion. It was actually right in front of me. I honestly remembered his name without looking at it. I promise.
Mortarion.
I'm proud of myself
representative
for doing
of the Space Wolves, Ophir Weirdmake, would testify to the fraught dangers of the warp and sway the Emperor's decision. Outlawing
Give me a
the
second. I just gotta check on my kid. I get paranoia out of nowhere. It's late in the night and my kid is actually sleeping. I don't know how many of you guys are parents, but you ever just be sitting there like, I wonder if my kid is breathing. And you just get up and make sure everything's okay. It just hits you all of a sudden. You're like, I haven't checked on them for a while, and the sooner I check on them, if anything goes wrong, the better things will be. So I'm just gonna check on them. Just for no reason.
The Master of Mankind would censure all use of psychers among the Legiones Astartes, a decision which would cement the Thousand Sons' destiny of betrayal.
Yo, you know what sucks? And that dude Mortarion still betrayed him. But we know that it was because the forces of chaos got to him. Which one was it? Nurgle got to Mortarion.
Infuriated with the Emperor's prohibition in the use of psychers, Magnus would seek a means to circumvent such a ruling.
Good for him.
With the Orc menace routed during the decisive Battle of Ulanor, the Emperor would install his most cherished son, Horus Lupercal, to lead the Great Crusade in his absence. Returning to Holy Terror, the Master of Mankind would in secret attempt to claim the Eldar Webway for the Imperium's use in safe traversal of the galaxy in the stead of warp travel. Magnus would seek solace upon his homeworld of Prospero and seek a means to divine a future in which his legion would once again be free to harness their mastery of the Immaterium. Within his long meditations, Magnus would foresee a great ruination poised to sunder the Imperium. Horus Lupercal would turn against his father and plunge the galaxy into a war which would damn humanity to a future of endless war, suffering, and ignorance. Unable to divine his own future, and revealing that the War Master had already begun his corruption in the service to the ruinous powers, the Crimson King would in an act of desperation bring ruin to the future of humanity.
Jeez.
With the aid of his legion's greatest sorcerers, Magnus would attempt to contact the Emperor within his psychically fortified palace.
Why?
Projecting himself to Holy Terror, Magnus would be prevented from contacting his father by a barrier constructed to keep out immaterial incursions. Accepting an offer of aid from an unknown entity within the warp to aid in his breach of the barrier.
What? He's trying to
Magnus
breach the
would
barrier.
naively accept the power of the Changer of Ways.
Of course.
In the venture to tear through the psychic barrier.
Of course.
Bursting through the Emperor's throne room, Magnus's actions would allow for the tide of malevolent warp beings to spill through the tear in the palace's defenses.
No.
Corrupting the Webway beyond all hope of salvation, The Crimson King had damned humanity to forever suffer void travel within the malevolent tides of the warp. Furious that his great work had been ruined, the Emperor would demand that Magnus face trial for his actions.
Oh, man. You can't change anything, but that pisses me off, man. He damned all of humanity, now we have to suffer the warp travel. I feel literally affected by that. Like, I feel like, damn, they got us. God dang warp.
Dispatching the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves, under the command of their Primarch, Guilliman Russ, the Emperor would order the Vilka Fenrika to bring Magnus to Terra.
If anyone knows me, I always like antagonists. You know, I like my boy Conrad Curtis. So this is an interesting scenario where I side with the pro-tags because I know no one's really a good person in this world. But I'm with the Emperor of Mankind. I'm with Rebute Guilliman. Yo, I'm with my boy, god dang it, Sanguinius. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all really screwed us over. And because of this war, you weaken mankind. Now you have to deal with orc invasions, chaos. Like, it was rough out here. We should have been united. What are you doing? Don't ever get it twisted. I like Fulgrim and stuff as characters, but there's a certain part of me as I keep getting invested in this world and finding out how you guys made things harder for us. I'm like, yo, that's some bullshit. So I still like the characters, but I feel the stakes, and I'm probably rock more with the pro tags. And this world sucks. I don't want these chaos people taking over it. It sucks, man. It's not even like I don't even see any bright side to evil. There's nothing positive to rule. You know what I mean? It's something. I can't explain it, man.
As Magnus's spirit returned to his mortal shell, he would be visited by the Architect of Fate, Sinch.
I'll give you an example. In Matrix, if the machines win, there's a scenario where the machines win, you get injected into the Matrix, and you live a false reality for all of time, but you feel good. Shout out to the Matrix season 1 or movie 1. See, that's a good outcome. If we betray the protagonist, we just stay in the virtual reality, right? Why would you want to be pulled out this good ass life and be in Zion of the Matrix? That city wasn't great. I'd rather go back into the Matrix. That makes sense to me. But when you're on the antagonist and you guys have your way, it actually sucks. Korn, there's no good or happy ending when you fall into chaos from most things that I understand. It sucks.
The Crimson King that he shall serve as his champion, Magnus had failed to warn the Emperor of Horus's impending betrayal and doomed humanity to forever be cursed by the machinations of the warp. As the Space Wolves neared ever closer to Prospero, the War Master would intercept their transmission and, under the guise of loyalty to the Emperor, give new orders to the realms.
He just saved Magnus.
To destroy the Thousand Suns with his detachment of Sisters of Silence and Legio Custodes.
Okay.
The Wolf King would have no reason to doubt the fealty of his trusted brother and accept his command. The Space Wolves would descend upon Prospero and burn its once beautiful vistas to ash. Magnus now understood that he had been manipulated by the powers of the warp, which he had time and again been warned to abstain.
Oh, he knows.
Deciding to sacrifice himself and his sons to deny the ruinous powers their prize, Magnus would no longer be a pawn of chaos. Allowing his homeworld to be razed to the ground, Magnus would hide the 6th Legion's fleet from his men to hasten the demise of his people. Death reigned upon Tizca as the Rout and their allies cut a sway through the streets of the once proud City of Light.
Oh, Magnus
Unable to accept responsibility for his actions, Magnus would not be capable of holding true to his own resolve.
Oh, there you go.
Aid in his homeworld's defense.
There it is.
Confronting his brother,
no conviction.
Russ, Magnus would battle the Wolf King in single combat. Protected with runic armor and the combined null power of the Sisters of Silence,
Guilliman Russ would face the
Crimson King in a duel of steel alone.
Cool.
Shattering Russ's armor with a mighty punch of his fist, Magnus would further puncture one of the Wolf King's hearts.
Jeez.
Yet such a strike had been a ruse, for Guilliman would blind Magnus, and after lifting the Crimson King across his knee, break the Primarch's spine.
Damn. Oh,
The
I
Crimson
didn't understand
King.
what I was looking at.
Yet such a strike had been a ruse.
Oh.
Guilliman would blind Magnus, and after lifting the Crimson King across his knee,
What? Oh, that's crazy.
break the Primarch's spine.
Jeez. Oh, that's crazy. I'll never want that to happen.
The Crimson King had fallen. His men had been slaughtered under his protection, and now his homeworld burned. Losing all hope of salvation or redemption, Magnus would surrender to the ruinous powers. Offering his fealty to the Changer of Ways, Magnus would pledge his soul to the being known as Tzeentch. By the will of the Lord of Change.
I do want to let you guys know, after further thinking, if I had to join Chaos, it's going to be Tzeentch. I'm assuming that I'm not going to have some of the worst effects. The reason is I tend to get off of the underdog winning in various scenarios, the person who's not supposed to have it. And I like to be contrary to popular belief or such. I find that it would ultimately be Tzeentch. I'm not into the sexualness. I don't want to torture nobody. I ain't really into all that. The pestilence, I'm also not really into looking nasty. And I don't got this hatred to keep fighting people like corn. But to keep messing with people, screwing up people's plans, yes, that is what I would enjoy doing for the love of the game. And that's how I could switch from a protagonist to an antagonist, whatever. Yo, I'll support everyone's goals and see who destroys each other. That's fun to me.
The City of Light would be teleported to within the Eye of Terror. Upon a demon world of the Architect of Fate's choosing, Magnus would accept his bargain as a servant of the ruinous powers. Transforming into a demon prince of his patron, Magnus had relinquished his mortal form, which would shatter into fragments to ascend into a corporeal being.
Oh, a corporeal being.
As the shards of Magnus were cast across the galaxy, each piece of the Crimson King's power would appear as mental projections to those whom sought his counsel.
Oh,
his primary form
weird.
Would remain on the demon planet of the Sorcerers, within the Immaterium, yet would deteriorate with the absent shards of his being. The Thousand Sons' first captain, Arzek Araman, would venture forth to retrieve the shards of Magnus.
The shards of Magnus.
One of the missing fragments, Araman would restore much of his Gene Father's power with the 4 reclaimed shards of his being. Bereft of the final shard, characterized by his humanity and good nature,
dang,
Magnus
that's the one that's missing?
real space with his Thousand Sons to aid in the Traitor War Effort.
The Traitor War
Seeking
Effort.
out the final shard of his being on Holy Terror, the Crimson King would ally with the War Master by necessity alone. Joining the traitors at the muster point of Ulanor, Magnus and his remaining Thousand Sons would journey to Holy Terror.
Holy Terror.
Absent from the battlefield, Magnus would orchestrate strategies aboard Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, for the traitors to breach the psychic barriers surrounding the Imperial Palace.
The Psychers.
But with the fall of the Lionsgate spaceport,
cool.
Magnus would take to the field. Weakening the Emperor's psychic might and aiding his brother Mortarion, the Crimson King would bolster the traitors' assault before the
weakening
great
the Emperor's psychic might.
As Mortarion and his Death Guard resumed their assault of the Imperial defenders,
that's
Magnus
so cool.
and his Thousand Sons would infiltrate the Imperial dungeons. Entering the Imperial Palace, Magnus would be confronted by Malkador the Sigillite and be informed that the final shard of Magnus was now beyond his reach.
No, I kind of still want Magnus to get it.
Last son of Prospero, Revuel Arvida, Magnus would never be whole again.
Imbued.
Seemingly slaying the Sigillite, Magnus's fury would not be satisfied. Entering the chamber of the Golden Throne, the Emperor would sit immobile and vulnerable. Aiming a psychic projectile to kill the Master of Mankind, Magnus's strike would be repelled by the Primarch of the 18th Legion,
Vulcan? Really?
Denied his vengeance, Magnus and his Thousand Sons would battle the Salamanders and their Gene Father.
Oh, let's go, Vulcan.
However, during the fray, the Emperor would show Magnus a vision of a possible future.
Really?
Magnus sat upon the Golden Throne, blissfully drifting into the tides of the warp and its mysteries alongside his father. Powering the Imperial Webway, This vision of Magnus would guard the Imperium as the foundation for its dominion of the stars and long-reigning peace achieved by the Emperor. The loyal Primarchs now presided over humanity in its hard-won age of prosperity, peace,
could have been
and
so
unending
good.
grandeur. Offering Magnus a chance to rejoin the fold of the Loyalists, the Emperor would claim that such a perfect future could still be achieved.
Can it?
Magnus had only to turn from the clutches of chaos and
It's too
accept that his
late.
1,000 sons could never be freed from the curse of the flesh change.
He refuses.
Refusing his father's offer,
I knew it.
Magnus would continue his attempt to end the Emperor's life. Pummeled into submission by the Lord
My
of
boy
Drakes,
Vulcan.
Magnus
Lord
would
of
once
Drakes.
again surrender the last shred of his soul to transcend fully into a being of the Immaterium.
This goddamn guy Magnus,
Banished
man.
by the anti-demonic wards of the chamber, the Crimson King would transform into a winged demonic
Oh, that's
entity.
cool. Damn.
Once more clashing with Vulcan within the Imperial Webway, Magnus would attempt to sway the loyal son of the Emperor, yet fail in his manipulations.
Vulcan can't be
Slaying the
stopped.
perpetual Primarch several times during their duel, Vulcan would not relent and be given new life with each mortal blow.
That's
Rescuing
broken.
Magnus with sheer brute force and indomitable attrition, Vulcan would,
Indomitable
before
attrition.
disintegrating from a final desperate blast of psychic energy, crush Magnus's skull with his Warhammer.
Warhammer.
Urtracule.
Ooh.
With the Emperor's victory against the traitors to the throne, the pawns of chaos would retreat from Holy Terror. Fleeing to the planet of the Sorcerers, the surviving 1,000 sons would for their defeat once more be afflicted with the curse of the flesh change. First Captain Arzek Araman would attempt to conjure a fell incantation to revoke the curse of his legion, yet further damn the 1,000 sons by transforming the psychically lacking members of the 15th into mindless automatons. Those who proved worthy would be empowered and assume command of the so-called
Mindless
Rubric
automatons.
Marines, and further fracture the 15th Legion. Magnus, now reformed from his banishment into the warp, would grieve
God
for the
dang,
loss of
Magnus.
more of his beloved sons by the careless meddling of sorcery. Seeking to
Give me a
punish his
second.
wayward
Give me a
son,
second. We're at 2020. Give me a second. Give me a second.
curse of the flesh change. First Captain Arzek Araman would be afflicted with the curse of the flesh change. The surviving 1,000 sons would for their defeat once more be afflicted with the curse of the flesh change. Sheer brute force and indomitable attrition, Vulcan would, before disintegrating from a final desperate blast of psychic energy, crush Magnus's skull with his Warhammer.
Once I got excited about that in my head, I kind of
With
lost
the
some
Emperor's
details.
victory against the traitors to the throne, the pawns of chaos would retreat from Holy Terror.
We're skipping
Fleeing to the
Emperor's
planet of the
killed.
Sorcerers, the surviving 1,000 sons would, for their defeat once more, be afflicted
It's
with
like
the
chaos.
curse of the
It's like chaos abandoned them because they lost. That's so. It's like, wait, what? Okay, what?
flesh change. First Captain Arzek Araman would attempt to conjure a fell incantation to revoke the curse of his legion, yet further damn the 1,000 sons by transforming the psychically lacking members of the 15th into mindless automatons.
Dang.
Those whom proved worthy would be empowered and assume command of the so-called Rubric Marines, and further fracture the 15th Legion.
That's so strange. So they have automatons who are mindless, but they serve the ones who are strong enough to survive this ritual?
Magnus, now reformed from his banishment into the warp, would grieve for the loss of more of his beloved sons by the careless meddling of sorcery. Seeking to punish his wayward son, Magnus would confront Araman upon the planet of sorcerers and demand blood for his callous actions. Yet Tzeentch would intervene and spare the life of the Sorcerer Lord. Banishing his first captain and ordering him to fulfill a quest to understand the warp to its full extent, Araman's actions had torn asunder the Legion into conflicting warbands. But despite the 1,000 Sons' continual burdens, the Crimson King would rally those who remained loyal to his cause and seek penance for the loss of his homeworld.
Yeah.
Emerging from the Immaterium during the 32nd millennium, Magnus would orchestrate the devastation of worlds throughout Imperial space.
Orchestrating worlds to be
Hunted by
destroyed?
the Great Wolf of the 6th Legion, Ironhelm, the Thousand Sons would evade the Space Wolves' persecution and assault their homeworld of Fenris. Despising the Sons of Russ for their chapter's past actions, Magnus would seek to raise Fenris in the manner of his own homeworld, sieging the Space Wolves' fortress known by outsiders as the Fang. The 6th Legion would endure the assault of the Thousand Sons for 40 days.
Where's the homie at?
Awoken from his long slumber, the ancient venerable dreadnought, Bjorn the Fell-Handed, would lead his chapter on their survival of the invasion of the Crimson King, whilst the scout marines of the chapter would be dispatched to bring word of the assault to Harek.
They just don't know.
With the return of the Great Wolf, the Thousand Sons would be
They just didn't know.
Wounding the Primarch of the 15th, Harek would manage a valiant defiance against the Primarch, yet die during their brutal engagement. Yet the Ayat would stand, and with the reinforcement of Harek's men, the Thousand Sons would be driven from Fenris.
1,000
Satisfied
times.
with destroying the gene stores of the rout, Magnus would continue his plots to destroy the legacy of Leman Russ. Returning to real
What a
estate
hater.
in the 41st millennium, Magnus would attempt to...
Magnus is such a hater. I think he's the most hating ones of these. No, Conrad Kurz was out here doing work, man. So never mind. Between Connors and Magnus, I don't know who was a bigger hater.
to retrieve the holy relic of the chapter.
That's
The
crazy.
Spear of Russ. The Dionysian Spear would enable Magnus to revive his fallen sons, yet with the intervention of Ragnar Blackmane, such heretical rituals would be thwarted. Obsessed with the destruction of his most hated nemesis, Magnus would return once again during 999.M41 and enact the Siege of Fenris. Once more banished by the Great Wolf, Logan Grimnar, Magnus's relentless conquest of the Fenrisians would bear a heavy toll on the 6th Legion. Yet despite his greatest efforts, the sons of Leman Russ would endure and stand ever vigilant to face the Crimson King's campaigns. With Magnus's emboldening by humbling the walls of Fenris, he would soon find another foe to bring to heel. The Primarch of the Ultramarines, Rebute Guilliman, had returned to the faltering Imperium.
What? Where is the homie? Hold on. Yo, I don't got it. No, I don't believe it. Here we go. Joe Rebute Guilliman has returned. Because this dude's been a menace, man. It's time for him to get back in his spot.
And begun his task of avenging the lost glory of humanity.
The lost glory.
During the Avenging Sun's Terran crusade to return to the throne
The
world,
Avenging Sun.
Magnus would ambush his brother's fleet.
Oh, Magnus
Trapping
tried.
Guilliman within the maelstrom, the Primarch of the Ultramarines would regardless manage to escape the clutches of the Thousand Sons and would confront his once brother upon the moon of Luna. Dueling the Lord of Ultramar,
Look at him. Oh my
Magnus
God.
would overwhelm the Primarch of the 13th and seem poised to end the resurgence of the
Jeez.
Emperor's solitary beacon of hope. Though
Jeez.
Guilliman would not die this day, and
Nope.
with the aid of the Sisters of Silence, the Avenging Sun would impale the Crimson King with the Emperor's divine blade and banish Magnus once more into the Immaterium. Though Magnus remains a tireless thorn in humanity's side. Relentless in
He
his
just keeps
quest
coming
to
back.
one day crush the Imperium and seek retribution.
Nice.
Here I am in the flesh, and somehow, there you are.
Magnus cocked his head to one side and smirked.
I don't remember you seeming so insignificant. 10 millennia have made you no less arrogant then,
Asked Guilliman,
10
warily
million.
circling his towering foe. Inside his
Jeez.
helm, a look of disgust twisted his patrician features as he
Patrician.
regarded the monstrous form of the Crimson King.
Crimson King.
Certainly, those years have done you no other kindness.
Magnus laughed.
How could you have such grand plans, and yet such scant vision has always eluded me?
Ooh.
This, the Demon Primarch said, empiric energy stirring as they gathered around his leveled glaive,
Is what a true power looks like.
Is what that true
I see no power
looks.
here.
said Guilliman, shaking his head in dismay.
I see corruption.
Yo, Guilliman will look at would get surrounded by 100 gorilla and just, it would just do one of these, and he's just like, I see no power here. For some reason, that statement is so profound, man, because Magnus already hit Roberto with Rebute, Guilliman. Magnus already hit Guilliman with what I consider a fantastic bar. And Guilliman said, I don't even see any power here. It's like, ooh, I see no power here, boy. Anyway, I see corruption and enslavement to monsters that are worshipped as gods. Ooh, you're not powerful. You a slave, he said.
Corruption and enslavement to monsters that are worshipped as gods.
Call him out.
That Rebute.
Magnus laughed, sparing a glance at the loyalist fighting nearby.
Perhaps we can finally agree.
Oh, he accepts it.
This has been a tale of the great Imperium of Man.
Yeah, that's cool.
Read by the Remembrancer. The Primarch of the 15th Legion would be brought low for his lack of restraint in his pursuit of knowledge and power. While Magnus would be among the mightiest of Primarchs, he would nonetheless be brought low by pride. For in my next transmission of the Traitor Primarchs, we shall elucidate the Primarch once championed by both the Emperor and the Ruinous Powers. The War Master of Chaos, Horus Lupercal.
Are we there? Are we really there? Are we really there? Hold on. Let me really check. I've been going in the order of this playlist, and I can't believe that we're gonna already be there. Oh, the next one is him. We're on Angron, we got Guilliman, Wataria, Matt. It is gonna be Horus Lupercal. That's the next video. I'm pretty excited about that. All right. Anyways, I am actually pretty sleepy. I probably shouldn't have recorded, but I was very, 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 very ambitious. I have an obsessive personality to schedules, and when I start doing something, so I'm like, man, I wanted to get to 2 Primarch videos this week. Doesn't matter what's going on, I'm just going to do it. But I'm pretty sleepy, and that's just that. But I enjoyed it despite any fatigue you saw in my eyes. Magnus, I didn't really have too much of a connection with this video. He's cool. He has a tragic story, but I don't know how to explain it. It's everyone just warned him, and it's such a big loss. But I actually get it. I mean, because of his psychic powers and that connection to the warp, it makes him very susceptible. The thing that made him strong or made him great made him also very susceptible. And it seems that a lot of the people who turned on the Emperor, it looked kind of inevitable. You're looking at them and they're gifted or they were abused or something. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to betray the Emperor. It just kind of is what it is. And sometimes the Emperor just made it easy for that betrayal. So I think the character is cool, but, I don't know. I don't know. So I don't have anything else to say to you guys, respectfully. So I actually don't know how to end my video. So I'm going head on out. I'm going to get some rest. I appreciate anyone who watches my content. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do so. Change your subscribe. Just change the settings in your subscribe to get notified every time I post a video. Hey, you get to watch the videos on time, and that helps me with covering more videos on a timely basis. Until next time, I got a Patreon. If y'all want to join, it's just $1 to give the homies some support. And I'm out. As always, thanks for supporting this channel. If you don't know, we do have a Patreon, and it's free to join. You can stay updated, suggest content, or vote on polls. If you're interested in our uncut and early reactions to anime, K-drama, Western shows, and movie reactions, which include exclusive reactions not found on YouTube, you can join the upper tiers on Patreon, or you can stick with the edited content right here on YouTube. We got Yaboyrocklee Reactions also in the description of this video. Until next time, I'm out.